Aquarium News of the Month.
Hi everybody, I'm Art from Art's Fish Room, and this is the first episode of Aquarium News of the Month. As you may be aware, I put out a couple of episodes of Aquarium News of the Week a couple of weeks ago. This wasn't not going to be a sustainable project, I discovered, as I have a very busy job outside of the aquarium hobby. So I've decided to make this a monthly look at the news instead. And I hope that it's going to be interesting to those of you who have a passion for aquariums and the animals and species that live inside those aquariums. So let's get into looking back at what's been happening in the world of science and ichthyology and of fish keeping and aquariums over the past month. Today's episode is going to include some new species from South America, some remarkable research on hearing, behavior, and welfare in fish, and several stories reminding us that responsible fish keeping is conservation in action. So let's get started. The first news article we're going to look at is the discovery of a brand new Pleco in the deep brown waters of central Brazil. Researchers were wading through a tributary of the Rio Parana. They lifted up their nets and they found what looked like a familiar fish, but there was something a bit different about this one. They realized it was another type of catfish, but it wasn't quite like the ones they knew from before. The proportions of its body, the patterning, and the shape of the fins didn't quite match any that the scientists knew. And so after months of research, after months of measurements and DNA sampling and sequencing, the team confirmed that this was a new species. And one could think of this as another tile in this giant mosaic of all the different kinds of catfish that are found within South America. To put that in context, the Hypostomus genus, of which this new fish is a part, already includes more than 150 formally named species, and scientists estimate that at least another 100 are awaiting in collections in the wild to be described. Many of these have already entered the aquarium trade decades before anybody knew what they were, which is why we still see L numbers in store tanks that haven't yet been classified. And so for aquarists, this story is a reminder that such a thing as a common pleco doesn't really exist. It might be a gentle 15 centimeter algae grazer or a 60 centimeter river giant that will eventually redecorate your living room floor. Identification isn't therefore a luxury, it's part of animal welfare. So the next time you see a Hypostomus SP on a label, stop. Ask where it comes from, how large it grows, and what river system it inhabits. Behind that L number, that code, there might be a species that has never been seen before in science, until now. The second story is from the same continent, South America, but it's very different. This is a fish that sounds like it swam straight out of fantasy literature. Maloplis sauron, named after Tolkien's Dark Lord, was described from the Rio Xingu, one of the Amazon's most biodiverse tributaries. Its name comes from a striking black ring encircling a red eye, the Eye of Sauron. The fish itself is a vegetarian pacu, a cousin of the piranha, but a grazer of fruits and seeds rather than flesh. What fascinates scientists is how such distinctive markings evolve. In the turbid waters of the Amazon, bright bands and contrasting eye spots help schooling fish recognize each other. The Sauron pacu's design might be communication, it could be camouflage, or indeed it could be both. At the other end of the Amazon scale are this year's newly described characins, adults less than a centimeter long, living amongst decomposing leaves. They spend their entire lives within a single square meter of stream bed, feeding on microorganisms invisible to the naked eye. For aquarists, these stories expand our imagination of what a tank community can be. The Amazon doesn't just produce showstoppers, it also gives us the tiniest fish on Earth. Each new discovery challenges us to build more authentic microhabitats in our tanks, full of leaf litter, dimly lit, full of life at every level. It's not just South America that holds jewels of the freshwater aquarium world, it's also in Africa. Let's take a look then at Lake Victoria's comeback kids. Here in Lake Victoria, scientists have recorded a quiet miracle. Decades after the introduction of the Nile perch collapsed the lake's native cichlid populations, field surveys are finding haplochromine cichlids returning to shallow bays and wetlands. During the 1980s, hundreds of endemic species vanished as the voracious Nile perch exploded in numbers. Entire evolutionary lineages disappeared from the wild, and yet a few survived. In isolated lagoons, in university labs, and crucially, in the hands of aquarium keepers such as you and me, who maintain breeding lines. Today, with fishing pressure eased in some areas and conservation zones established, populations are rebounding. Juveniles of once extinct species are appearing in seine nets for the first time in decades. For the hobby, this is a vindication. Responsible captive breeding isn't just a pastime, it can be a lifeline to conservation. When we keep detailed records, trade ethically, and maintain pure lines, we create what some might call a living library that science can draw on when nature falters. Now, imagine if we could shrink down and step inside our tetras. Strange as that may seem, it would be an interesting journey because you'd find an extraordinary bit of anatomy, a delicate chain of bones called the Weberian Apparatus. A new fossil discovery published this month finally shows how and when that system evolved. Early freshwater fish lived in murky, sediment-rich rivers where sight was unreliable. Over generations, they converted part of their vertebral column into a tiny linkage connecting the swim bladder to the inner ear. Think of it as a biological amplifier. The swim bladder picks up vibrations in the water. The bones transmit and magnify them to the ear. Suddenly, these fish could hear far beyond the capability or capacity of their marine relatives, detecting predators, shoaling companions, even the snap of a crustacean claw meters away. For us as home aquarium keepers, this tells us that our aquariums aren't silent. The hum of a filter, the buzz of an air pump, the tap of a lid, these things all create a soundscape for the creatures in our tanks. To a fish with the Weberian apparatus, vibration equals information. Keeping that environment consistent, which means no rattling impellers, no subwoofer thuds from the lounge, they translate directly into calmer, healthier stock. In other words, quiet tanks aren't just peaceful for us. They're essential for the fish that evolved to listen. If you've ever kept more than one crayfish, or perhaps even just one, you'll know that no crayfish is the same as the other. And a new review of behavioral studies confirms that individual crayfish display consistent personality traits: boldness, shyness, a drive to explore that influences everything from feeding to dominance. In experiments, scientists measured how quickly crayfish emerged from shelters after a disturbance. Some charged out immediately, claws raised. Others waited minutes before venturing out. These tendencies were stable over weeks, meaning we can talk about personality in vertebrates just as we do in mammals. For aquarists, this explains a lot. One individual might constantly rearrange decor, while another barely leaves its cave. In breeding tanks, mismatched temperaments can trigger fights or failed pairings. The solution is in the design of your tank. Create multiple hides, line of sight breaks, and give space. Allow each animal to find its comfort zone. And this is yet another sign that even those that we might think of as the simplest creatures in our aquariums have complex lives worth accommodating. AI, artificial intelligence, is making waves on a global scale, and it's also now in aquaculture. Researchers are using sensor networks and machine learning models to predict stress, feeding needs, and water quality changes in real time. Systems monitor dissolved oxygen, pH, and turbidity, then flag anomalies before fish show visible distress. One study achieved over 94% accuracy predicting when pond conditions would drop below safe thresholds. For farmers, that means fewer losses. For us hobbyists, it perhaps is something of a coming revolution in the way we manage our tanks. Imagine a compact home version of what they use in the commercial sector. A probe that's in your sump, sending data to an app that says nitrite or nitrate trends are rising, partial water change advised. We're not quite there yet, but hobbyists are already experimenting with Arduino or Raspberry Pi controllers, and I don't think it's too long before we see AI enter the home aquarium hobby in a very big way. The moral here, of course, is not to replace intuition with code. It's to pair the two. Technology extends the senses we already have as caretakers of our underwater worlds. Data plus observation will equal mastery. Something that we learn as aquarium keepers, and to be honest, I think we know this inherently, is that the environment inside a tank directly shapes the welfare of its inhabitants. Fish that are housed in sterile, featureless aquariums show higher cortisol levels, poorer growth, and more aggression than those in more complex environments. Enrichment in scientific terms means any addition that stimulates natural behaviour. Plants to explore, substrate to sift, currents to swim against, or even lighting changes that mimic dawn or dusk. For the home aquarist, enrichment is rather easy to apply. Rotate the decor monthly. Moving a root or a rock forces fish to reassess its territory, reducing boredom and aggression. Layer the habitat. Provide caves for shy species, open swimming corridors for schooling fish, and vertical structures for surface dwellers. Use floating plants to diffuse light and to give midwater fish security. Even your bare bottom hospital tank could do with some enrichment. Put in a single pot or a PVC pipe. Stress hormones drop when fish have shelter. So think of it this way. Enrichment isn't just decoration, it's environmental medicine. A beautifully designed tank can look like art to us, but feel like home to those who live in it. Earlier this year, the Sri Lankan Department of Fisheries announced a ban on several predatory aquarium species after repeated escapes and illegal releases upset local ecosystems. Species on the list include large snakeheads, certain catfish, and even the beautiful but problematic peacock bass. What makes the story compelling is that Sri Lanka isn't a huge aquarium export nation. It's a hobbyist country, much like ours. The decision recognizes that while the aquarium trade brings in income and enjoyment, it carries ecological responsibility. For home aquarium keepers anywhere in the world, the principle is quite simple. Know what you're buying. That cute 5 centimeter baby fish at the shop could become a half-meter apex predator in a year. Retailers have a duty to inform. But ultimately, it's us as buyers who have to decide. We've got to do our research first. So if you love monster fish, plan for them. 1,000-litre tank or more. Heavy filtration, backup power for aeration. And if that's not possible, then go and admire them in a public aquarium somewhere else. Ethical fish keeping starts not at feeding time, but the moment we purchase the fish. For those of you who love aquascaping, here's a bit of news. Every few years, aquascaping swings like a pendulum. After lush jungles and CO2-driven Dutch layouts of the early 2020s, the new wave for 2025 is minimalism with meaning. Designers are stripping tanks back to strong geometry, one bold piece of driftwood, an uncluttered sandbed, and open water that lets fish behavior become the star of the show. Influences from the Iwagumi school and nature photography dominate competitions this season. Now, why would this change have happened? Well, there are really 2 reasons. First, fatigue for maintenance. Many aquarists want beauty without a weekly 3-hour trim. Secondly, a philosophical shift. People want aquariums that tell the story of a place. And that's where biotopes come in. Recreating specific rivers or lakes is no longer niche, it's mainstream. A true-to-life West African stream with leaf litter and gentle current can be just as stunning as a manicured stem plant forest. And if you're experimenting this year, the rule of 3 still applies. 1 substrate type, 1 dominant hardscape material, and 1 lighting tone. Simplicity sharpens the eye and calms the viewer. In an age of constant stimulation, minimal aquaria offer peace and clearer water chemistry to boot. And so now we cross over once more to South America, into Argentina, where a group of conservationists and hobbyists is racing the clock to save the Australorhynchus killifish. These annual species live in pools that fill during the rainy season and vanish in summer heat. Their eggs lie dormant in the soil until the next rains return. But with agriculture expanding and climate patterns shifting, many of these pools are disappearing permanently, and when the mud cracks, the lineage ends. So to fight back, researchers launched a GoFundMe campaign to fund habitat protection and a network of captive breeding sites. It's small-scale, direct conservation, the kind the aquarium community understands better than most. Killifish enthusiasts worldwide are already helping. By exchanging breeding stock and maintaining local populations, they're preserving genetic diversity that may one day repopulate the wild. For those of us who keep aquariums at home, this is an invitation. Your tanks can be conservation tools. Even a single breeding pair documented and shared responsibly can make a difference. Few hobbies can claim that kind of impact. And finally, the last story for this month, something that brings it all together. A major study published last month paints the starkest picture yet of freshwater life on Earth. 1/3 of species is threatened with extinction. Rivers are dammed, wetlands are drained, pollution is unrelenting. Invasive species, overfishing and climate change compound the pressure. The report calls freshwater ecosystems the forgotten frontline of biodiversity. Now, why does that matter to us as aquarium keepers? It matters because every tetra, every barb, every cichlid we keep traces back to those same endangered habitats. Our tanks are miniature ambassadors for entire river systems. It means that small daily choices, buying captive bred stock, conserving water, avoiding wild-caught imports, they carry global weight. It also means sharing knowledge, helping newcomers understand cycling, filtration, and responsible disposal. Freshwater biodiversity is in crisis, but the aquarium community can be part of its rescue. We already practice what conservation preaches: observation, care, patience, and respect for living systems. The difference now is recognizing that the line between the tank and the river has always been thin. And so that sobering thought and stark reminder brings us to the end of this month's aquarium news. I do hope that you will join me again in about 4 weeks' time for the next episode in this series. And in the meantime, please catch up on all the other videos available to you on this channel and on your podcast app. Aquarius Edge now has close on 70 various topics available, covering all manner of things related to freshwater aquarium keeping. So enjoy surfing through the library, listening, watching, and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep discovering, and keep enjoying this amazing hobby. Bye for now.